Is there any alcohol in Fear? Is
I
there?
don't know. I can't remember any.
I just remember the cheesy
No.
poofs
I mean,
bags or whatever.
yeah. Dude, that fucking fat ass. I cannot fucking believe. Like I said, I like in my review. I grew up like reading about this game and like the top 10 scariest moments list in like a fucking Game Informer. And I'm just like disturbed and shocked. I'm like 8 years old. I'm reading all this like child pregnancy stuff. Like this is fucked up. And I'm playing the game, and it's just like Norton Mapes fat ass stuck in the fucking mouse unit, just jiggling.
Bluebird, what's your situation? Over. Bluebird, come in. What the hell?
Something's coming. It doesn't sound like a soldier.
I got a bad feeling about this. We're under attack. They're all over the place. I need backup. Come on.
John, do you want to talk about why you picked this one out? I think you were the one driving most of this.
No, I'm not gonna claim responsibility for this. This was because Hotbucket and Nisa were playing it again. I was like, oh, I should play Fear again. And then I don't know, one thing led to another. So this like butterfly effect of playing Fear.
Yeah, I think we all kind of just played it randomly. I can't remember why. Maybe because Issa was playing it or something. I don't remember why. I just played Extraction Point and then
Okay, that's what I was about to ask.
hopped on. I did not play the vanilla game for this. I have played it before, but not for this event.
I owed Hot Pocket an FPS game, multiple FPS games, because he played some racing games on my behalf, so I owed him some FPS games. So this is one of them. I need to play Blood soon as well, but this is a pretty decent one to pick up, because I don't think I played any other games that were sort of like remotely like this. I'd mostly just played like the really quick action ones, and then I played a couple CODs. So getting to play something sort of was like a middle ground like this was actually pretty interesting.
You just quickly pick it up, Raf. Like, oh yeah, they're playing Fear. Speed run Fear.
Speedrun. Also, Ziad threatened me if I didn't show up on the podcast again, so I think now is the time.
Okay.
Because you missed
yeah.
Kuririn. Had you played Kuririn? Or did you just skip that one
I
completely?
played it like a year ago, so
Damn,
yeah. So,
you missed
oops,
it.
my bad. I mean, yeah, I did most of the base game and then played Extraction Point. But Extraction Point with the what's it called? The no slow-mo run. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
the if this was a good like an actual good video game, this would be like Bayonetta, and then like, the hardest difficulty would like take away slow mo. And I was thinking the running title would be called "That's the Point, Man."
That's funny.
Don't let John talk for the rest of the podcast.
Sorry.
He's lost his privileges. So yeah, if we want to talk a bit about what Fear is, mid-aughts first-person shooter from sort of like acclaimed first-person shooter devs, among some other stuff. Monolith Productions.
Yeah.
They had done.
Probably their most known game was Blood before this.
Yeah.
They made some other stuff too, but that's kind of their calling, and that's pretty clearly like the closest game they've made to this. I mean, I guess Shogo Mobile Armor Division. That's another one. That's kind of like that's like the kind of the late era of Doom likes. Has more of a narrative bent. Has anyone here played Shogo? I have not. I've seen some gameplay though.
When I was like 5, I could probably
Oh,
call
okay.
my dad and he'll tell me if it was good or not.
Yeah.
And I know that Jeff Orkin, who was the guy who did like the AI for this game, talked about No One Lives Forever being a big influence, or being like kind of the foundation for some of the enemy like behavior in this game.
Oh yeah, those games came before this. I forgot.
Yeah, and those are like, am I correct in saying lightly MSIMI?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is part of why they
Yeah.
had sort of complex or attempting complex AI for the time. Which, not that this is remotely an MSIM, but you sort of get that like the same sort of idea around like emergent like scenarios is, I think, very much present in the combat in this game and how the AI works.
Nova was weird because it was also like a stealth game. A lot
Yeah.
of walking up to dudes and meleeing them, yada yada.
I think I don't know. I think that's enough background. If you play Blood, then yeah, you'll be right at home.
You better cut out Dead Space or
Yeah, Dead
Dead
Space. Yeah, we're gonna.
all the fucking quiet points in this, John, when you edit
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Sean, now keep it in, please.
I
I
guess yeah. You go.
No, I was gonna say if we do like
Yeah,
a Patreon version, I'll do like, oh yeah, you can subscribe to the Patreon for the extra 30 minutes, and it's just 30 minutes of us, like a little.
No, I'd have the intro too.
Yeah, we should give them like the Doja Cat part and the
Yeah.
just me like commenting on football commercials.
But yeah, this game
So
sucks.
fear stands. Yeah, it does suck. It stands for fear stands for First Encounter Assault Recon, which is basically this like special ops team that handles like paranormal happenings. They don't really contextualize it super well. It's weird because there's not like I mean I guess Paxton Fettel, who's like the main antagonist, quote unquote, sorta, is I guess they know he's psychic from the beginning. Is that right?
Mhm.
I think so.
So they're sort of like, oh, he's got paranormal powers, so we're gonna pull out Fear to stop him. The rest of Fear you never see because every single time there's like other members of your unit that are around, they like almost instantly get murked, or they like disappear. They just like bungle, or they're like, oh, I can't move on. No, I'm just gonna sit here and flap my flap my jaw at you until you move on to the actual combat. So it's mainly just you, the point man, who are just going through a bunch of dilapidated urban environments and just headshotting as many clone, psychically controlled soldiers as possible, moving towards some sort of. There's not really a clean resolution for this game. I don't know. I know Extraction Point's supposed to add on to that, but you just sort of keep going forward until you find out some stuff about like your parentage and Paxton Fettel, his parentage, and like the government experiments that led to it. And then it's like, oh, that's crazy, and then it just ends. There's like a psychic girl who I guess gave y'all your powers. Like you have this like reflex ability, and then Paxton Fettel's got the
Spoilers.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
This game story is
Who gives
fucking
a shit?
stupid. This game story is stupid.
It's so bad.
We're gonna be spoiling the story. It does not matter if you play this game. You should not give a shit about the story. The whole point of the game is shooting guys.
There was I have to mention this. There's a certain article I read about this game that talked a lot about how genius like the method of conveying the story is. And said method is mainly there are flashing answering machines around everywhere, and then you click on them, and then you hear a message that has to do with the story, which gets confusing because like by the second half, it's almost entirely like Harlan Wade, and then that Genevieve chick, and then Alice, and maybe like one or two other people, and they apparently just have like offices across like. I like at least like 10 different buildings, and then for whatever reason, like when someone wants to talk to them, they'll just like at random pick one of the offices to call and leave a message on. I'm also confused at why they obviously are like having a conversation over the course of the game, but they aren't listening to the messages. It's like how the fuck do they know what they're talking about? If there's like no like the person like Harlan will get a message and then he'll just I guess instantly respond without listening to the message. Because he just leaves it for you to find. Like, and of course, you can't move away from too far from the phone or while you're listening to it, or else you can't hear it. So
It really anticipated 2 years later BioShock 1's revolutionary method of storytelling of picking up the audio logs.
this article specifically said that this implementation was much better than BioShock's.
That's
Wow,
crazy.
wow.
That's crazy.
The thing I would say
Because it's not contextualized in BioShock. It's just cassettes they left around for some reason.
I think in BioShock they at least try to like gesture towards it, where they're like, well, Andrew Ryan is saying we should be documenting the rise of Rapture or something. So it's every citizen's duty to leave little like journals around for the future. or for posterity.
Yeah.
And the other thing about F.E.A.R is that the messages are like criminally boring. I remember like I was like halfway through the game and I realized I had not listened to any of them, and I thought, well, maybe for the sake of just like engaging with the narrative, and it's like I hit like a random one and it was like, oh yeah, Genevieve. I had those reports back about the water filtration plant, and I was like, nope, never mind.
It makes you wonder. There is no compliance lawyer at like Armacham or wherever these people were. Like, there's like if I was like a lawyer and I knew all these people were just like constantly producing audio evidence of all this shit, like insanely unethical shit going on. It's like, can y'all just like say, hey, meet me for a 15-minute stand up. Just like send out an email real quick and maybe discuss it in person. Right, like there'd been, what the fuck were they thinking? Just like recording all of this. Well, I mean, I guess they wiped off the fucking fat ass. Norton wipes his like, you see him like scratching his ass when he's just wiping the hard drives like 2 levels before the end of the game. Of course, he didn't wipe all of it because then there's just a bunch of laptops that you just click a button and then upload something to the F.E.A.R like commander or whatever, and he's like, huh, it says here that they sedated Alma and then made her carry a child to term. That's pretty fucked up, isn't it, Point Man?
You just don't respond because you're the silent character or whatever.
Yeah. I was half expecting like at the end of the game, like the camera would turn around and it would show that you look identical to Paxton.
I
Like,
think it's implied, right? Like something like
you're
that.
like, your silhouette is sort of similar.
I mean,
but-
it's like, are you? Again, spoilers. Are you twins with Paxton? Is that what I can't remember what exactly they say.
I think that's what
he's
like
older, I think.
I think in
Okay.
F.E.A.R 3 that's what they do, where they have the same like face, but like Point Man has a beard and then Paxton's clean shaven.
Yeah. Okay. Well, glad F.E.A.R 3 could answer that important question.
Yeah, F.E.A.R 3 vindicated.
Okay. Well, my segue into this is that probably when they're telling they're telling Point Man all this epic shit, he's probably just thinking in his head like, man, wasn't it cool when I fucking blew that guy up with a shotgun?
That's
Like
a great
daydreaming
segment.
about that, because that's like what you actually do in this game is you shoot people with the shotgun,
Yeah, and they blow up into little.
and they
mists of
blow
blood.
into little bits, little mist of red.
It's so awesome to like, you're like 20 like feet away at least, and then you like just completely like whiff the shot, and like one pellet hits their head, and their whole body just like is eviscerated. Like, oh, you hit the crit for somehow, and just fucking it turns them into mush. It's like, what the fuck? I think I actually probably critted on the shotgun more often at medium range than I did at short range. Like, because my aim's bad, and so like short range, I'd be like a little too far to the left, and it would like, I guess, like spray away from the, not like away, but like most of the pellets wouldn't hit the guy, and be like, fuck. I was like, I'm right on top, and he's about to like own me. And then medium range, it would be like, I guess I'll just like throw some shotgun shells out there just to like keep him at bay because I have so many of them, and then just into a mist. It's like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
It's very, very. I mean, the shotgun is godlike in this game, but it is very. It's very strange if you're like sort of used to how a shotgun like should work, sort of.
In like the video game logic, and I guess in
Yes,
general,
yes, yeah.
considering, I don't think they're actually gonna explode into bits.
Oh god, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's way more like general purpose than in most other games for sure.
Yeah. So this game is of course known for its AI. That's kind of still what it's, one of the best AI in video games, which is like sort of true and also slightly misleading. There is a I don't know, whoever edits this, that can put in the document of the lead AI programmer, Jeff Orkin, kind of talking about how the AI in the game works. How it's kind of the structure is that it has individual. It's like a goal-driven one where it has goals, and then it uses pathfinding algorithms to iterate over the sort of possible actions it can do and find the most efficient action to achieve the goal. and then there's a squad coordinator on top of that kind of gets, it assigns the individual's goals based on the scenario or however it's coded based on that. I don't know if Pang, you want to talk about that more, because I know you were kind of interested in that in general.
Yeah, because it's definitely it's like got parallels with like engineering work that I do, and
Yeah.
what's interesting because so they talk about they use A-star, which A-star is it's a derivative of what's called Dijkstra's algorithm, which is like a very old school like 1950s pathfinder or graph traversal algorithm, and it basically gives you like, okay, here's the most efficient path like through like a set of nodes, and so that usually gets extrapolated to like a physical space, right?
Yeah.
And A-star is just a variation of that uses like a heuristic added on top, so you basically can like sort of salt the score that you assign to each given path through a system. And so what makes their implementation interesting is that they not only have like this like actual pathfinding tied to that, but they also have higher level like action planning, right? And so it basically ties together all the like possible actions at any given point like into a graph, and then we'll traverse it with the heuristic being like matching or at least as far as I understood it, the heuristic being matching a set of different priorities that each enemy has. So, and I think different enemies are tuned to have different like priorities. Um, but there's like a self-preservation instinct. So one of the famous things this game does is enemies will actually like run away and like reposition if they know they're like like outgunned, right? Um, this includes like obviously finding cover and that kind of thing, and then also it's trying to kill you. And then there's higher level squad stuff that's happening. That's sort of there's like a global coordinator for each encounter that is letting the soldiers roam on their own, and then occasionally one of them will like initiate some sort of like squad maneuver, like, okay, let's all line up and then advance forward. I'm on point, that kind of thing, right? So just the way they applied it is very interesting because you take what would usually be applied to a physical space, and then you end up treating your set of actions and goals as if they were a physical space and traverse through them, which is just I don't read a lot of modern game AI, like obviously ignoring AI as like we use that word today, but it seems like just a very elegant modular system that someone with like a with just like a basic understanding of like famous algorithms could pick up pretty easily. And it makes it very every single time you want to add a new behavior to the whole system, it becomes very easy to plop it in without having to edit a lot of like very intricate logic that would usually make up like these kind of AI routines. So yeah, definitely worth reading that paper if you're interested in like the nuts and bolts of how it works. It also goes a lot into depth on the parts where it's faking it, which I found very interesting. If someone else wanted to talk about that for a bit.
Fake stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
It does fake stuff very often.
yeah.
No,
Did you read the document, right?
I read like articles over the years. They detailed like
Well,
they
the way
push stuff over.
Yeah, I mean the way it kind of fakes stuff. I mean, there's kind of an example it gives in the paper. Editor showed the example of like flanking behaviors. They'll flank. It's like, well, they don't really have a concept of like flanking being a desirable action. That is theoretically maybe something you could implement in like the squad manager. But that's not how it works. Basically, just the way it works is they like to move behind cover, and then what the mapper will place different pieces of cover kind of to different sides of the player, and then because one soldier claims a piece of cover on one side, the other soldier will claim the piece on the other side, and then it looks like, oh, they're flanking you. Well, it's more just like the mapper placed them there, and then because the mapper knows that the AI will value that like this, and it'll cause them to move in this way. There's many scenarios like that where it's sort of there's dynamism to it, and it's sort of organic, but also it's sort of driven largely by the mapper and the encounter design.
Yeah, they also discuss how they use like vocalization between squad members a lot to sort of like imply that something's happening, right? Like the big example that seems to trick people occasionally is, "Oh, I need reinforcements," and it's just something generic that they say when they're, there's only like one or two members left in the squad. And so if you're playing, past the point, you get to that, and then you hit some, preconceived trigger that spawns more enemies in through an elevator or something, you'll be like, oh, it actually, it's actually being planned like that. But it's not like, I mean, Metal Gear Solid 2, sort of like did this idea earlier, and it didn't have, calling reinforcements in from other parts of the map, but they at least had some sort of like they could, restaff areas that had lost troops, and they could, they would send in extra people to sweep areas that seemed to be under, some threat. They don't really do that in Fear. It's very much like linear encounters, just back to back to back to back to back. But they do a very good job at making it seem like there's more that's interconnected over the course of the level, and that you're actually in like you're actually fighting a force that's like moving through a place instead of just like a bunch of different encounters that have been like specifically placed to test you, right? In that regard, it's very effective, and it is dynamic enough that it's like I would never like fault it for being like too scripted or anything.
Yeah.
Because you can try. There's certain parts you'll like. I think there was a part where a guy like knocked over a filing cabinet in front of me. I was like, oh, knock over cover. And I think I did this actually like 3 or 4 times because I kept dying. Like I'd get past him, and then I would die, and then I would just like start back because I wasn't like quick saving constantly. And he just did the exact same thing all like 3 or 4 times. It's like, oh, okay. That guy was definitely like put there to knock that cover over and like do his whole thing. But there's a lot of other parts that like it's almost like to your detriment to quick save too often, because if you're doing it sort of like in the middle of combat encounters constantly, then it's like, well, there's really alternate ways the fight could have gone down prior based on how the AI reacted. And you can often sort of get a better roll or like set yourself up in a better way if you like go back to the beginning of the encounter instead of like, oh, every time I kill a couple enemies, I'm going to quick save, something like that. So there's definitely like there's very palpable dynamism that's occurring there, which I find at least very fascinating. Even if that's sort of the only trick that the game has in its playbook.
When I was,
Yeah. Oh, go on.
I was gonna say a video I watched recently because I played Fear and then like Half-Life and Half-Life 2 like back to back to back, and there was this guy on YouTube called Joe Wintergreen, and he did a good video about like the AI, like kind of the lacking AI in Half-Life 2. One of the points he brought up was like the fact that the Combine, like their radio chatter is really garbled, so you can't really understand what they're saying. And a lot of the intelligence in Fear is more like just like perceived intelligence. I forget the exact quote, but it's like, the combined effect of hearing guys say, "I'm flanking him, I'm getting my shit pushed in," is like you feel like there's like an intelligence behind like the behavior, like the kind of simplistic behaviors that you're fighting, and Fear does a really good job of that, where it's good vocal chatter, like arenas with a lot of props for them to just sort of interact with. And like a good point, like another good point of reference is Perseus Mandate is in like fucking Gmod levels. They're so hideous and they're so like barren that there's not really a lot for them to work with. So they can do very basic stuff, but they never feel as intelligent. And you kind of realize like, Fear has good, like pretty like robust enemy behavior, but it's like it's level design that's open enough for them to like surprise you, like less than you being flanked. It's more that they just have some room to kind of navigate around some stuff. And like good vocal chatter, and I think that's one of the things they talk. There's an interview with Jeff Orkin with the YouTube channel AI in Games, and AI in Games has covered Fear throughout the years, but this is like the most recent video. I'll put like a link to this in the description. But they were talking about the process of like getting these replica troops like implemented, and then also like, oh, we actually need some more voice chatter. We need some more kind of behaviors and reactions, and it's like. I think the overall effect was like just a game where it's like it's still sort of a magic trick. It's still there's still a lot of like fakery, as you said before, but it's like a very convincing effect when you're actually in the game.
I will say that and this sort of gets into, I think, some stuff that we can talk about regarding the like the reflex mode and everything. But I will say they sort of do expect you to play in a certain way to really get the most out of that, like their chatter and whatnot.
Hmm.
I know I played because I didn't play with reflex for a lot of the game. I played. I mean, I turtled a decent amount. I was definitely like using cover a lot. And there's just like so many times where it's like, because I wasn't being very aggressive, they didn't really know how to like respond. So I got a lot of like, one of the guys would be like, "All right, time to push forward," and some of the guys like, "No fucking way," and then they just sit there. Like that easily happened like a dozen times. And then what happened a lot is like I'd just be sitting there, like waiting there for them to pop their heads out again, and would be like, "He's flanking us! He's flanking us!" I'm like, "No, I'm fucking not." Like, which is especially egregious when you're in a hallway and there's like no way to flank.
Yeah.
Which are definitely like the weaker like sections of the game. It's still like I think the gunplay is strong enough that it's not like terrible or anything, but you definitely you definitely get the most out of the AI when you get these sort of almost like it reminded me a lot of like like team deathmatch arenas and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like it like I know that clip that Hot Pocket posted in chat was like just remind me of Shipment like so much. Like there's a lot of that like kind of map design, but and compared to some other games, like I remember we were all playing Lost Planet 2, and there's like sections of that game where you can tell it's just a multiplayer map.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh, okay, they put in the multiplayer map, and then we're gonna do something with bots for a bit, and then we're gonna go back to like the linear campaign. Because you can tell this is like designed around that methodology from the jump, it feels a lot more like seamless in how the levels are designed. But then also, you know, especially like towards I think like the last real level was really emblematic of this. Is like, oh, we're running out of time. We're just gonna fucking put in a bunch of these linear sections, and there's not really a lot of challenge because they can't really flank you, so it just turns into a hallway shooter. Not super interesting, but they keep up a surprising amount. I would say the hit rate is probably like, I'd say as high as like 75% for like real ass combat encounters. In terms of coming up with like really interesting environments for you to move through that continue iterating as the game progresses.
I do wonder if any of the environments are actually from the multiplayer mode, which is it's called Fear Combat. I didn't play it. I don't even know if it works still or how you. Maybe there's private servers, but because there is a multiplayer mode. It's one of those things where nobody really talks about it, but it was. I mean, it was kind of the standard at the time to make that type of thing. So I don't know. Just a weird thought.
And I know that you mentioned, Peng, you were saying that like, the game really falls off, and it totally does. Like once the drone section, I know you mentioned, where it's then there's the ghost at the very end, which are just like abysmal to fight. And it's like part of it is like part of it is that they're so simplistic and they act so like, you know, like they are so like thoughtless to fight, and they basically they're just like use the slow mo. Like the rest of the game is like you get sort of interesting encounters if you let stuff play out, but these are like they're just like, you know, shooting galleries, and they're just like so abysmal. And I think they're sort of indicative of the fact that like when F.E.A.R is not you in a room with a bunch of like fighting a bunch of soldiers, the game is kind of terrible. Like all the horror sections with Alma, like the attempts at kind of building atmosphere, and then I would say that the majority of its like set pieces, you know, I'm thinking of like, or not set pieces, but a lot of its like attempts at like variety. Like so, like there's like a couple of valve puzzles, like literal valve puzzles that are pretty weak, and then there's like. I was thinking the turret section feels like very Half-Life 1 coded. There's like one where like Norman Mapes like activates some turrets, and you have to like go to like fuse breakers and turn them off.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just saying, just very trial and error. Like not, it's like these, especially with it being so dark in this game, it can often be to its detriment when it tries to do something that more environmental, because it can be just like fucking hard to see, right? And like those turret sections where you're just like, oh, there's a door somewhere that if I run to it at the right time, then I won't get shot. Then you just do that for like probably, you know, a dozen times over 20 minutes. And I by the end of the game, when it throws more turrets at you, more drones at you, that's when I started being like, oh, this is what the reflex mode is for. Is so I can just turn off these shitty parts of the game. And especially, I think there's like the final turret section. You're more or less expected to actually blow up the turrets,
Mhm.
which means you poke your head out and you shoot as many rounds as you can until it starts firing back, and then you just go behind cover. It's so interminable and
Yeah.
stupid. Like, but yeah, it definitely everything that they try that isn't just doing the squad fights is almost universally just bad, bad, bad.
And there's stuff like there's the assassins that show up, I think, very briefly throughout like the campaign, and they're never really integrated. They're cloaking enemies, and they're never really integrated with the normal soldiers. So you fight them, I think, once or twice throughout the over like the course of like Fear and its expansions. You fight them like half a dozen times, but they're never really integrated, and it feels like kind of a shame because it's like there's some cool enemies, like there's some cool ideas for enemies, but it's like this really is a game that does like one thing well, and it can kind of exclusively do one thing well.
Even
Yeah.
even like the heavier enemies that they throw at you, like they've got so there are like there are technically like different kinds of enemies, but they're more or less like interchangeable. They just sort of have like they have different weapons, which are just the same weapons you carry,
Mhm.
and then they have different I guess like levels of armor, but it's like not that big of a difference. I think the only ones that really stuck out were the stupid fucking ATF guys. Who just I know they're like identical, but they're just so much more annoying to me because they'll have this stupid voice, like they weren't genetically
Yeah, it
engineered to have a
doesn't.
cool guy voice.
I don't understand what the point even was, considering they, to my knowledge, have the exact same behavior as the replicas, and they're just. It's also just kind of weird to be shooting, these dudes in like little caps or like I don't know.
Yeah,
That was weird to
yeah,
me.
you're just fucking doming like normal ass guys. And there's some parts where you can see them fighting the replicas, and they're also getting smoked. And it's like you sort of feel bad for them. But there's like proper heavies that come out, and I think they almost always have like the 10, what was it, the 10 millimeter or whatever, the heavy cannon or whatever. There's like I don't even know what to call it. It's like the really precise heavy gun that actually
I
is
know you're
not that
talking
good to
about.
use.
It's like a
Yeah,
nail gun or whatever.
yeah, it's like basically a nail gun. Um, and yeah, those are also like as for our idea just comes down to well, it also shoots at you, but then also it just has a lot of armor. And they have this sort of they have like a stagger thing. I mean, like I guess all of the enemies have a stagger thing, but these in particular have like oh, you hit them enough and they will stagger, and then you can shoot them more. And it's early on, it's like it feels like okay, I'm just gonna like tank through this and throw all my grenades, and later on, it's like oh, I've got the like the Type 9 or 7 or whatever it is, the fucking the like the energy cannon.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, the railgun.
You, yeah, you keep like 60 rounds of that just to like turn those off whenever you run into. Same with the eaves, sort of. Which John, I think you mentioned in your review. Like the eaves are actually weirdly non-damaging, even
Mhm.
though they're shooting fucking rockets at you. Like a heavy with a rocket launcher is almost is like way more guaranteed to like one hit kill you than the eaves, which sort of just like I mean they'll deal damage and it's sort of hard to dodge, but those are also never integrated with the other enemies like at all. The heavies are, but they're not the eaves.
Those are the
And they sort
mechs.
yeah, they put them in weird places too. Like there's not really like a boss encounter. I mean there are a couple of those, but like they just sort of like pop in the middle of the level. It's not like a
They're
build up
yeah,
one towards them.
they're better used in extraction point. There's a little more build up. They're still kind of dumb enemies to fight, but there's more of like a like a oh shit type moment that they're kind of going for. It's like even if it's not really you just fuck shoot it with a rocket launcher or whatever. It's still a little cooler.
Yeah, these like are almost like apropos of nothing. I think there's the first section you fight them in where it's like I think it comes in like it comes I think down on an elevator and you're in like a little like arena and there's like it's circular and then there's like a little hallway that in between that has like a rocket launcher. You can the thing with them is like the projectiles get caught in the environment and then they get caught up in the environment, so it's actually pretty easy just to like have them shooting at a wall, shooting through you at a wall or through like a window, and they can't actually damage you. So you can just it's like snipe them. And the one section where they kind of come the closest is there's one where you're in like you break out into like a courtyard and there's like a couple of like replica snipers and then there's like it can kind of suppress you while the replica guys like flank around, but it's still like not great. They're just they're weirdly implemented, and they don't really have like they don't have like the hit scan weapons that would probably be like more threatening. It's like they only have the projectile weapons that are pretty easy to avoid. So yeah. I was also going to say, you mentioned there's like the Gauss rifle, the sniper rifle in the game, and I think it's also one of the big reasons that the game gets like less interesting as it goes on. Is like something I had not really appreciated was it takes a little bit of time to kill the guys at the beginning of the game, or to kill soldiers at the beginning of the game, because you have like an SMG and the shotgun and the pistol, and so it's a lot of times like you'll tag a guy in a firefight and that'll actually give him a chance to run away, and so it's like you have a chance for firefights to sort of play out in slightly interesting ways. But as you get deeper in, you get like the Gauss rifle, and there's also like this auto like combat shotgun, and it just destroys enemies. And in some ways, it kind of works as like a power trip, but it's like this is But this
game's too long for that.
Yes.
Yeah. But it is like
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say I think I mentioned this in chat when you weren't there, but I think after reading your review, or rereading your review, I noticed I think one of the reasons why some of the end game held up better for me was because I just sort of reflexively like didn't use those weapons. Not even as like I'm not gonna make it hard for myself, or I'm not gonna make it easy for myself, but out of like I like my assault rifle and I like my shotgun, and I don't want to drop the Gauss or whatever. So I just never picked them up, and then I think reading it was like, oh wait, those repeating cannon, I'd never touched those, and they probably would have just eviscerated enemies. Because they are is pretty deadly, but it's still like, unless you like get a perfect headshot and like a couple bullets in there, it's not gonna like instantly kill anyone, and so you can sort of keep that feel going towards sort of late in the game. But yeah, it's not, especially like when you have to like. There's a couple sections where they will just give you a sniper, and then you're expected to actually like snipe, and then it's like, oh, this is really not that interesting. Like, not that I mean I like sniper sections of games, but in this game in particular, it sort of strips out. It's just another thing that strips out like the smart AI elements and strips out the positioning, and just turns it back into cover shooter.
I know we've been pretty down on it, but I know that Hot Pocket and I both played, and I know Raph played Extraction Point as well, and like there's some better set pieces in that, and then the funeral home at the very beginning of the game might be like the best shootout in like the entire F.E.A.R series, as far as like embodying like the sort of open-ended but like sort of directed level design, where it feels like a nice marriage of like a single player campaign, but also like a multiplayer map, because you have all these rooms you're able to dip between, and then also a lot of props for the enemies to interact with. They're like knocking tables over and breaking into different building, breaking into different rooms.
Which one are you talking about? I guarantee you all know the encounter, but like
at the beginning of Extraction Point, there's like the funeral home. You break in, it's like 2 stories. It's
I'm gonna look it up. I guarantee you all know what you're talking about. I'm just not making the connection. I probably didn't even notice it was like a funeral home or something silly like that.
You also posted footage
Let me look it up.
of that like shipping container arena.
That was, I think, the best fight in the game for me. That fight in particular. It's like this. It's in, I think, interval 2, kind of in the middle. And it's like this. You know, it's just a ton of. Oh yeah, I guess we should mention also. For the record, Extraction Point and Perseus Mandate was made by a different studio, Timegate Studios. Who I think made other expansions for this type of thing. Whatever they made, like, I think that was their niche. Monolith was off doing whatever else. I can't remember what game, whatever game they made after this. That was in development, presumably.
Condemned.
Condemned, yeah.
Wait, really? No fucking.
I Condemned
the
same year as this, yeah.
That's so funny.
But yeah, so it's like Timegate was basically, they already had the foundation and they were just building different levels. I know someone someone mentioned how, maybe it's you, John, you can tell because like the base game of F.E.A.R is kind of loaded with random junk in all the rooms that like goes flying and gets interacted with and all that type of stuff when like the papers go flying and like the doors and all that stuff. I can't remember exactly what the props are, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then F.E.A.R Extraction Point doesn't really have as much of that, but on the other hand, probably a lot of the arenas are better designed on average in terms of the raw geometry.
Yeah. It's weird because I think it's like if you play Fear on its own, it just ends in such a deflating way. Like the last like hour of the game where you're just like shooting the ghosts that like spawn at you, it just feels like it's like what people think Half-Life 1 Zen is, where it's just a complete departure from like the rest of the game, and it's like okay, this Fear 1's ending is actually that. But then like Extraction Point is like a direct continuation of the game, and it's like okay, if you actually treat them as like as like if you treat Extraction Point as like the third act that Fear 1 should really have, it's actually like really bolsters it. And then Perseus Mandate is like a separate expansion, like a separate set of characters, like another Fear team, and it's like much worse, and it's like it takes some of the shoddiness that's like a little that's sort of present in Extraction Point, and like that's the entire thing. And like, I think I said it feels like a Gmod map, but that's exactly what it does. Like hunt down the Freeman or something.
Section 8. Raph, can you explain Section 8, Raph? Explain the connection of Section 8. And I mean, I can see the time gate at the bottom, but explain the design through line.
Oh, the thing is, Section 8 is a first-person shooter, but it's focused on competitive multiplayer. I think they found out that like programming this really complex AI isn't as good as just having a human player there to shoot at. So they
didn't program the AI though.
Oh, exactly.
Oh, they just saw Monolith do it, and they're like, "That's stupid. You all are stupid. You're wasting your time."
Yeah, of course. So
yeah.
The thing with Extraction Point, I'm not sure if this is actually real, but it's something I felt and something I saw online was that the AI are a little more aggressive, a little more willing to just run at you. Not sure if that's actually real, of an actual change in Extraction Point, or just a weird little, thing I imagined. But it felt a little harder than base game because of that.
That feels true because there's like a wave-based defense sequence that Hotbuck has posted some footage of. And it's like the enemies just like rush you, and they feel like way more brutal in Extraction Point. And I remember a few times in Fear, in the original Fear campaign, like I would have killed the majority of the soldiers in a room, and then I would know that there was still like one guy there, but like there would just be like this moment of like a standoff where they just won't do anything. So I think there is like they are more aggressive, and maybe it's also a placebo effect, but they feel more aggressive in Extraction Point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue also it kind of fits the tone more. I mean, it's stuff. Again, I'm trying to remember exactly, like, Fear 1 or like the original base game is kind of like, I don't know, it's like horror, but it's kind of a little lighthearted. It's more like you just kind of have moments where you're like, you have moments of ooh, almost spooky, and then intermixed with you just fucking shooting guys like it's an action movie or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Extraction Point has a more consistently like dark tone to it.
Oh yeah, and the thing that really struck me was like there's that guy like Holiday who gets killed.
Oh yeah, that is brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like 30-second long death scene where you think like okay, no, he's definitely dead here, and he gets knocked around, and then like. It's like he's a there's not really any characters in the Fear games, but it's like he's a nice presence in kind of a bleak game, and he gets killed really horribly, and then I think the rest of the cast of that game gets killed off as well. And one thing I will say is I think like Fear 1, you have like every time there's like a quiet moment, there's that guy that Patty mentioned where you hit a laptop, and then it's like basically having your dad comment on the game. You're like, wow, that's really fucked up that happened, and it totally siphons off like all the atmosphere that's been built up, and then Extraction Point spends a lot more just like quiet time where you're also in like environments that are like much more like they should be like very like populated spaces. Like Fear 1 sort of feels like it's this like shadow war or something where you're kind of in these like it's like on a corporate campus at night, or like kind of this rundown industrial area, and then Extraction Point you're in like subways and hospitals and stuff, and they should be populated, but I think it's like a better overall effect.
Yeah, because it's got the setup or whatever where it's the apocalypse or whatever for this city or whatever. So everyone's gone. Everyone's either dead or they ran away. So yeah, it's just these totally deserted sort of normal areas, like you're saying. And then also, I guess there not being as much junk around to do, to have go flying kind of paradoxically reinforces that.
Because there is that, and I think they mentioned there's like the quote where they wanted to marry like the tea house shootout in I forget what John Woo movie it is, but there's like a tea house shootout in a John Woo movie where it's like shit just goes flying. And there's like there's a fundamental part of this game, like a fundamental part of like the F.E.A.R's identity that like is interested in just badass like kung fu shit.
Yeah, for sure.
And you have like the bicycle kick button and everything.
Yeah, I think. Also the lighting. The lighting at Extraction Point is beautiful. It's like seriously one of the best looking games I've ever seen. It's just this super contrasty, dramatic stencil lighting where it's just like this, these super bright lights, and then around it these really dark shadows that are really, that are super like super linear with the strong dividing line. Yeah.
There's
So I
definitely
think that adds to it.
from this era, you get a lot of like, I mean, I think by this point they'd already started like using like throwing bloom and everything, and all that. But like seeing a nice, like really clean looking game with some good tech behind it that just like it got no post processing or like anti-aliasing or anything, and just like upscaling that, like, oh damn, this like looks really really good.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a really, it's like a nice. I mean, just a like a nice product of a time where they hadn't quite started just like filtering everything and all of that. And it makes it actually holds up, I think, really really well today. And runs really well too because it's an old ass game.
Yeah.
Once you like character models are probably where it's like, actually even the like anyone you have to talk to with a face obviously looks like a like Mr. Potato Head, but like
Yeah.
most of the enemies look good because they're all in armor, which I think actually translates really well. And they've got sort of these like glowing eyes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's another random little thing that you just reminded me of, where they like, you can like John was saying, where they kind of have a lot of health. They can do this thing where they kind of play dead if you hit them along it. They kind of fall on their back and they'll like sit there and not move, trying to not move that much. But their eyes will still be glowing sometimes if they're still alive, and they'll kind of, when you look away, they'll kind of try to shoot you.
Yes. They will get spread on the ground. It's like they would be wide open.
Yeah.
Which is funny because all those most of it feels like sort of like normal like video game character, and then like they have just everyone has certain stagger animations that are like weird like mocap. It's like
yeah, it's like totally like oversold mocap.
Yeah, it's like on Uncharted 1. I don't know if any of y'all played that recently, but there's like the sort of zombie section, or the weird gremlins section, and it's like, because it's a T game, like you run up on them with the shotgun and just like bam, one in the face, and then just like hand on head twirl in a circle and fall over.
like Crash Bandicoot died.
Yes, exactly. It gives me vibes of that when I play like certain reactions they have in F.E.A.R, or like when they're when you shoot them and they just sort of like go dead with like the top half of their body, they're still standing up, but they're just sort of like swaying, and then they shake it off, and it's like, what are you fucking doing?
Yeah. I think also, sorry to return to our other point, I think a lot of the set piece stuff worked better in Extraction Point for me, because I feel like that kind of, there's still some stupid cheesy like ghost sequences or whatever, where it's like, oh Alma, but like I think they kind of tuned it, like they kind of went a little back on a lot of that, and it's kind of just more like little creepy moments. There's a part in the vents that's kind of the most memorable one, where it's more like, it's more, I guess, in just being in the setting and stuff like that, rather than there are still some moments, but I feel like it worked better.
I know you mentioned there's a sequence in Extraction Point where Alma actually protects you, and it's a nice little like continuation. Like it feels like, the jump scares of F.E.A.R 1 have kind of run their course, and it's a cool like effect seeing kind of her exploding power is used on the enemies.
Yep.
I think the other one is that there are also some ghost enemies, but they're like melee guys that run at you, and they're invisible, and you walk.
Yeah,
in,
I mean, they're like not real enemies. They're kind of just for the little set piece, and they're very very easy to kill.
Yeah, but I remember them
Yeah.
being like they felt like more like because there's the ghost guys, but then there's like these like I don't know revenants or whatever, and I thought they were like a nice. They're kind of like the mechs where it's like they're still not an amazing enemy, but they're built up a little bit better as far as atmosphere, and then they're like they're a little bit more designed around where it's like okay you can they're invisible but you can see the props, and it's like it's a cool environment that's all like bloodstained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, I can't remember exactly how true this is, but it feels like they don't give you as much of the power weapons in Extraction Point as I remember in the End of Fear. There's like a couple, like you can kind of carry a couple into some sections. Like I remember, I had the railgun for a while, and then there's the little what is it the kind of the laser gun, like the red laser where you just hold the button and it shoots.
Yeah.
It's just the continuous laser, but it feels like I was saving them for something. Like okay, it's like okay, I'm saving them. Okay, here's a heavy. I'm gonna use them, and now I don't have it for a while. Like it's not like I always would have had access to it and been able to just kill every enemy or whatever.
Mm.
Right.
The one like gamer criticism I had of Extraction Point was that they're way more generous with your explosives this time around. Like I remember in Fear 1, it's like you have some grenades, but you're not always topped off. But in Extraction Point, a lot of times you will go like before the next combat encounter, you will have like enough explosives for the majority of your like whatever your like deployables are. So like you'll have some like remote bombs and some grenades, and like the enemies are pretty clumped together when you like start an encounter. So a lot of times you can make like the enemy like formations like way less effective just by like one or two toss grenades.
Yeah, I have to say I sort of appreciated that to some degree, but I think for a different reason. Grenades are weird the way they're implemented because you can use them at any time, right?
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, like you can use them while you're reloading or whatever, right? So it's kind of like I'm in a bad spot, like throw the grenade type thing,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it made it more likely that I would win the first time rather than having to like restart a bunch, which is. This is gonna sound weird. I'm gonna have to hopefully if whoever's listening to this kind of gets what I'm saying. You really want the difficulty to be something where you don't want to be spamming resets because that kind of takes away from the effect of the game. But you do want it to be hard, and you want it to be, feel like you're kind of on the knife's edge. So I feel like having the grenades in that role helped that for me. But I get what you're saying, where you probably use them in certain spots and defang a lot of encounters.
Yeah.
For me, my hardest encounter was because I actually had too many explosives. I went into the assassin fight with nothing but 2 rocket launchers. And of course, if I try to shoot them, they blow up in my face and instantly kill me. So that was a really fun fight towards the end of the expansion. Just having to like hover at mid-range against these invisible enemies, constantly darting around, dodging their line of sight, and like forcing them to round corners because that's like the only way I can like safely deal damage to them. Good game.
It sounds kind of funny and goofy.
Oh, it's super goofy. I had to like hop on geometry where they couldn't reach me so I could reset their AI so they could run away from me. It was horrendous. Love that game though.
Yeah, I know, Ref. You replay. I think you're a little less enthusiastic about them than us. I don't know if you want to say your criticisms.
Oh, I think part of it is that I played on the highest difficulty this time. Highest difficulty, no slow-mo.
Well, I think me and John did that too. So.
Well, I guess
that would
I'm
be
a fraud.
comparing us.
Woo.
I don't know what difficulty. Did you play on extreme pang or did you play on hard?
I played on hard.
Okay.
And I use slow mo here and there. I think by the end of the main campaign, I was like, maybe I should switch over to extreme. But I was like, well, if there's a random difficulty bump, I'm not gonna like that.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, but I think also this is sort of like my.
Well, you don't play that many like PC games, right? So you probably don't have to aim.
My aim's really bad.
Yeah, so yeah, that would make sense.
This is actually like it's sort of good onboarding because it like the actual aiming does matter enough. Like if you aren't getting headshots a decent amount of time, you are like wasting bullets and time.
It's a Twitch shooter, which is those things
yeah.
that are emphasized.
Yeah, so I was like, this is actually like, oh, by the end of the game, I actually felt like markedly better at aiming and all that stuff. But that's also why I'm like fucking getting too twitchy and missing shotguns and stuff like point blank and stuff like that because I just fucking suck at this kind of game. But it was definitely very manageable on hard, without much slow mo, just you know, trial and error.
Yeah, what are you gonna say, Raf?
Good game.
Good game. Come on, you have to.
No, I
provide
mean,
the
like,
discussion material.
the issue is I found a lot of encounters funneled you through a choke point where you had little room to actually maneuver. It's not like all of them, but I think at least like maybe like 40-50%.
No, I know what you're talking about. Where you're kind of in hallways, and it's like, you know, there's kind of a lot of incentive to just peek, and not really like, you know, if you're just in hallways and you're peeking, you're not really, the AI is not really doing its thing that much.
Right. And another thing was, I could not fix my audio so I could actually hear footsteps.
No, I think the game's sort of just like that. Like, I was able to hear it somewhat, but it was definitely, it was not consistent. Like, it's not like Thief, right, where you can always hear it. It's like, I think what happens is only certain animations are like, because the way the way this works usually in code is that there's certain keyframes of the animation that are flagged to like tell the audio system to play the footstep at the location. And I think they didn't flag enough keyframes of certain animations to do that or something. I'm not really sure. It seems like that's what happened. Because like you hear it sometimes, but then sometimes they're like moving, but they don't really like play the footsteps when it kind of seems like they should. I don't know if anyone else had that experience.
Yeah, no, it felt like before the encounter started, I could hear their footsteps, and I could very clearly see like, okay, there's this guy here, there's that guy there. I can sort of pick out where they are based on the audio cues, and then the moment the fight starts and they start running around, somehow I can't hear those running footsteps.
Yeah, I think you can. For me, I was able to still kind of get a sense of where they were because you can hear the voice lines at their location and their gunfire and stuff, but like, I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's not that big of a deal because the game gives you so many health packs, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Usually, if someone flanks you, you don't know, it means you use an extra health pack, and you're still going to be at full next encounter anyways. So it's just a weird. I feel like listening, like keeping track of enemies, which would be like an interesting challenge for the player, and instead the challenge is more of like hitting that health button. It's like reactively healing yourself more than reactively targeting them.
Yeah, I think one thing that does help is the deployable turrets.
100%.
Because then first of all, you can hear them when they're shooting at the turret and where the turret is shooting. And also, it kind of gives you more of an opportunity to flank even in areas where the space is a little limited. What is it like? In the subway, that fight with the heavy, you know what I'm talking, where they kind of open the gate and there's like, it's like there's a staircase downwards and there's like a heavy at the bottom and a bunch of guys. Right. That was a time where it's like, okay, the deployable turret is making this a lot more sort of both more manageable and more interesting as a fight. Because you can kind of, you know, you can work more with the space even though it's open.
Yeah, I mean, it draws aggro. It makes that fight good. Like, it makes it way more fun. That sounded way meatier than I meant.
I mean, well, I think they give one to you, so it's like, I don't think then, but they give you one like not that far back, right. So it's like it's pretty reasonable for you to have expected one. Yeah, I think I do think I was thinking after playing sort of some other games in this game, I was thinking about that a lot. I think that is kind of one of the big flaws of this game that goes beyond the very surface level stupid stuff. I think it needed. This is definitely one of those janky Western PC games, right? Which have many things to love, but also many flaws. I think it really would have benefited from more polish in kind of the fundamental key areas of the enemy animations, the kind of some of the audio stuff like you were mentioning, and maybe some of the AI to tweak it to make them a little more play a little nicer if you if you turtle so that they don't just kind of sit there and do nothing. Because this game is sort of I don't know, I find it hard to describe exactly what I'm talking about, but to me it kind of is in the same sphere as like you can tell it comes from the Western side in the sense of like it's almost like a role-playing type game to me. Like it's not like a game that you would, it's not a Japanese arcade style game where you would like replay it over and over to get all the different nuances. It's more like a game that has like a deep mechanical / AI / whatever foundation in order to very effectively put you in this role and this, of give you this little fantasy of the point man or whatever.
Well, it's such a weird experience overall for that very reason, because I think it's really interesting when there are like contradictory design elements in a game, right? Because you sort of get like when they interact, they can cause very like interesting outcomes to arise. But then in this game, it's like they have this very clearly stated aim of like, we want this to be like a crazy action game. And then they just sort of designed this game and then sort of layered some random elements on top to make it, I guess, feel more like nuts and out there. But I mean, this is like Reflex mode in a nutshell, right? It's to literally like I mean, stuff like the cool melee that the game frequently plays up for you. It's like, oh, you need to use the melee, and you can get instant kills with the melee. It's like you're not getting close enough to anyone to actually use the melee unless you
can just
click
shoot
the
them
reflex button
or to kill them.
But especially when you have a shotgun that.
Yeah, that's what I
good.
mean. You just
Exactly, like it's like there's no it's and so and it's there's like all these voice lines and stuff that are hidden behind like killing people with melee and freaking them out like that. When it's it feels sometimes like there's like no interaction in the contradiction, and it makes it sort of just gives it such a weird feeling that it's trying all these different things, and then the combat is just like it's this reverse tactical shooter, and you can sort of make it into you can sort of make it into what you want, right? By how much reflex you apply, or like what difficulty you're playing on it, etc. But it never really. I don't know. It's just the weird combination of elements. Like it's just like they're all like compartmentalized in a weird way. I don't know. It's a very hard to describe.
No, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, I think Extraction Point is basically the iteration of that, where they kind of excise a lot of the stuff that makes literally no sense, and then they keep the stuff that does, and then it kind of coheres into a whole where the parts are actually serving a greater purpose. But even then, it's like, this is a very idiosyncratically designed game where there's just a lot of different things that don't really make any sense that together.
Yeah, I have seen some. I sort of get this line of thought, which is that, well, if it wasn't for like all the horror stuff and it wasn't for all like the weird like mail and like all that shit, then it wouldn't really have an identity. And it could be there's a really great FPS hiding under there, but no one would get into it because there isn't like this like surface level stuff. And I sort of get that point, but it's also like, man, you have to be really, into jangling keys in order to like say get anything out of like the horror aspect of this, right? Or to get anything out of. I mean, I can see how people get stuff out of the power fantasy element, but then it's also just so like it takes away the game. You just turn off the like I said in the review, you turn on Epic Guy mode.
Yeah, I don't think we actually talked about yet like specifically Reflex mode and like how that we kind of mentioned a few times, but because me, John, and Pang, and I think Raph, right? We all played the game without the reflex mode. Oh, yeah, you said you used it to like skip some set pieces or something, bang. But...
Oh yeah, and I used it in a couple of early fights as I was like sort of getting my sea legs. But yeah, it's like later on. And it wasn't like it wasn't like I went in and I was like, I'm gonna make sure not to use it. It's just I sort of forgot about it because there's like nothing to it as a
the game. Well, the
Yeah.
game it just flows. Again, I think it has some weird effects if you don't use it. Like the melee becomes a lot less viable, like we were mentioning. But yeah, it just flows a lot better, and I feel like it almost sells the fantasy more, you know, because instead of being, you know, you turn on your magic powers and just like dome 5 guys instantly or whatever, it becomes you are actually just like, you know, it becomes a lot more visceral, right?
Yeah.
Of just like fighting in real time, and like when you've just gunned down all these guys in real time, and he's like, you wiped out the whole squad. I don't know, it just feels more, and it's sold more to me.
Yeah, 100% agree. And there's nothing to the mechanic. It literally just slows the game down, and it's on a cooldown. That's it.
Yeah,
like,
I think
it doesn't come back particularly fast, but also like you shouldn't really need to use it, you know, that much. And they give you, especially with the upgrades you get for it, it's like they give you quite a bit of it.
I'm not going to derail. I'm not going to derail this conversation with this, but a game like Vanquish, I think, integrates it a lot more. And it's like, okay, if you took slow-mo out of that game, that would like completely break everything.
Well, I think that is very much like a Japanese Western split, like right there.
Yeah,
it's like when Japanese design, and I know I'm being like insanely like general with this.
But you know, if you play enough, you can sort of get the arcade tradition. You call it that, right?
Yes, yeah. They come up with these rules that are not like, they aren't emergent in the sense that they like lead to like a ton of different, you know, like role possibilities. It's just they're like, they're very, they're very like the way they integrate with the other mechanics is done like very specifically, right? Such that there are like fixed interactions between a bunch of other different mechanics, and then how you choose to use those or how you choose to exploit them can become very, you know, dynamic. And then something like this, it's more just like, I mean, like something like Reflex, it's just taped on. Like most of the guns are just taped on. Like there's a bunch of actual emergent properties that are dynamic, but there's not like a strong set of like rules that are like sort of guiding the way you think about the game and the decision making. Because if you really, especially with Reflex mode, but even just in general, it sort of does turn into like clicking on enemies.
Yeah.
You know?
I think because there's kind of been a batch of successors to F.E.A.R or whatever, and kind of probably the most significant one is Celico. There's also Trepang too, which I have not played. Celico at least played the demo, and that one I think is notable because it explicitly does not have slow-mo, because I think they kind of realized about this problem with it, and they decided to just ditch it entirely.
I was thinking Severed Steel as well. Like it's a much smaller shooter, but it kind of goes all in on like the.
Yeah, it's much more integrated in that game.
Yeah, and part of it I was going to say is that Perseus Bandit has such terrible level design that like it's so barren that you actually kind of need the slow mo, because it's like it's sort of putting you in these situations where you can't like I'm sure there are ways of beating that game without slow mo, but as far as like having a game where you're not spending like an hour on an account.
Yeah, like trying to play it like a normal person.
Yeah. It's like, okay, they're and there's enemies in that game that also like they have, I think, a reflex mode of their own. So you're like it sort of becomes a win button there, but it's like it feels like in a weird way like the design is so bad on its own that you actually kind of need the slow mo, and it's like F.E.A.R. It's like a game because the environments are so like compact, and like you can break up like the line of sight with an enemy. It's like you can reposition, you have like a ton of health kits, you don't really need the slow-mo. I mean, yeah, as you said, you don't really need the slow-mo on its own.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. It'd be nice if there was just something that was like I mean, like some interaction or like effect that Reflex had beyond just slowing the game down.
I think I feel like they should.
With it.
I feel like they should throw more grenades at you, and then you like shoot them out of the sky or something like that. That's just a random idea, but like something like that.
That'd be sick. Because there's a couple parts where it does like auto slow mo you, like when the
as
like,
like
set pieces where like maybe like cars are about to hit you or something, you have to jump out of the way. It should have been. It would have been awesome if they did that with like shooting grenades out or something. But
Or like a set piece with like you're getting shot by a helicopter, so you can like slow mo and shoot the pilot or something. Or like you could probably do
Oh,
it.
that would be sick. That would be sick.
You know we're describing games that already exist, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it should have been in this one though.
Yes. Which I guess just speaks to the fact that people afterwards kind of realize how this probably should be better implemented and just did that.
Yo, shout out to Max Payne 3.
Yeah, that's another famous slow-mo game.
That's a game with you go slow.
I think, John, you said spiritual successor to Half-Life, question mark. Is that what you already talked about? Was that your intent?
I was, and I actually, you mentioned like the fact that like this is not supposed to be like an arcade action game. They're supposed to be kind of like this deeper immersive quality. I think like Half-Life is a lot of that as well, because people kind of like, you know, it's not just like the appeal of that game is not just like shooting enemies, but it's sort of the overall like kind of being in this world. And I was thinking about that because I played them kind of back to back, like this and Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. But it's like I feel like there's a lot of qualities in this game where I feel like they were very inspired by Half-Life. You know, I mean, as many people were, but this sort of feels like an attempt to carry through some of those ideas. And I think, you know, we mentioned like the AI, but it's like the Marines and in Half-Life 1 kind of function in like a similar way, where they have like, you know, they have some basic enemy behavior, and then they shout out stuff. And then a lot of the best encounters in that game are almost like little multiplayer maps, where they're kind of like the first time you fight the enemies in that game, it's like you're in a little like shipping like a little like warehouse, and there are a lot of ways like of breaking line of sight and flanking them and having them sort of flanking you as well.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to mention this point, which is, you know, this is a Beach Gen game, right? It's kind of at the edge of Beach Gen, because this got ports to consoles, but it was to 360 and PS3. But the original PC release is in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I think the ports are infamously kind of bad. I don't know how bad the
360 is fine, I think. The
I think
PS3
it has
one is
jank
terrible.
or something, and then the PS3 one is bad, like you just said.
I was a little bit tempted when I was trying to get this, like I was fighting to get this to run on Linux. I was like, I do have the PS3 version. I remember I like looked at it and I was like, oh. 'Cause I've owned it for like 10 years on PS3. I just got it for like $2 or something, and then we'll never touch it on PS3. It's not even worth it.
But I do think this game is it's Beach Gen in like a design, well, time period, but also design sense of like it's kind of a midpoint between the sort of classic Doom influenced FPSs of the previous crop, and then the hit scan shooters that, you know, COD and all them. Because it has that, you know, for a long time after this, most shooters would be hit scan driven, where it's like little, you know, modern military guys with guns that shoot you and shooting gallery and all that stuff.
AR spray and pray.
Yeah. Whereas this one has some sort of varied weapons, but not like insanely differentiated, but like somewhat so. And then it has like, you know, it has I think the one that sticks out to me is the health system, where you just have, I mean, it's literally like the same as the blood health system, right? There's just like, you have like a, you know, you have X amount of them. You can take care of, I think, 10, and you just hit a button, and it just makes your health number increase. There's no sort of animation or anything like that, and obviously there's no regenerating health, which is kind of the hallmark of the coming era of shooters.
Yeah.
And so I think it kind of has, it's this nice balance of, it just kind of has the immediacy of that era, and also there's no contextual mechanics in terms of like you know, you don't have like gears cover and stuff like that, which is
for the very much to the game's benefit.
Yeah. yeah, I think,
I mean,
that would not really make sense in this game.
Well, and just I think the way cover in this game works in general is I found it to be very elegant.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously it can devolve somewhat into regular cover shooter territory, but like it actually really does make you think about it, and it will actually there are usually enough holes in cover that you can't really like sit in one place for like too long, depending on where you're at, or like it's just like Oh, well, we place this crate here, and if someone's at the right angle, they can't eventually shoot you, but you might be fine for like 30 seconds while you get your bearing and all that shit. So I thought that
Yeah.
part was, even though it's not really like integrated, you can tell they like in the tooltips they're very specific about like, yeah, you should be using cover, you should be using the lean, using all that, which works very well.
And I think even if you go back as far as blood, this is kind of Monolith's thing. Like blood has other enemies, right? It has the zombies and the belchers and the gargoyles or whatever. But really, all the hard fights in blood are you versus the cultists, and the cultists are sort of infamously they're hit scanners who will they all have like machine guns and will just gun at you the whole time. And so F.E.A.R is almost kind of an iteration on that, where it's like, okay, now instead of making a shooter where there's effectively one enemy, now it's a literal one enemy shooter.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is I think it worked out in this case. I mean, I don't, as we have mentioned with the other enemies that are technically in the game, I don't think it really would have been to the benefit to add more enemies without kind of a lot more dev time that they probably didn't have.
Exactly.
Oh, ostensibly that would have been the room for a sequel, but F.E.A.R 2 and 3 are really bad.
Yeah, I know. John, you've played F.E.A.R 2 and 3. Why did you do that?
F.E.A.R 3, Issa asked, and I had a decent time with that game. I think that is a terrible game, but that is like it is very pure, like great value Modern Warfare 2, and I can kind of appreciate that how quickly it moves through its bad set pieces and bad enemies. And then F.E.A.R 2 is just fucking abysmal. F.E.A.R 2 is just like so unfun. And I think there's like a little bit of like lore behind the game where it was like meant to be the console spin-off, and then there was the good dev team working on the PC F.E.A.R 2 that would have been great and amazing and fix all the problems we've been talking about. And that got canceled, and so all the resources got moved to the console, dumbed down console game for idiots, which was F.E.A.R 2.
Yeah, Monolith seems to have bad luck with publishers in general. The infamous Blood 2, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I like their output after the F.E.A.R games. I really liked the Lord of the Rings MOBA. I really liked Gotham Imposters. I know a lot of people dunk on those, but I think they're actually very well made.
Have you actually played them, Raph, or are you doing a bit?
No, I played them a bunch.
That's awesome.
Played them on console. It was sick. My PS3. I think I still have my save file. But yeah, I mean, my big issue with F.E.A.R 2 is that it kind of just ignores the lore of Extraction Point and Perseus Mandate. Like, you can tell it's a spin-off game because it just undoes all the lore. It undoes the canon, which I don't really appreciate, while also being really gross at the end.
Yeah, that stuff that's sort of infamous. That's what people actually like. Nobody actually talks about anything about F.E.A.R 2 except that stuff now.
Yeah, the Far Cry 3 moment, which...
Well, what's the line? What's the line where it's like you're like free pizza at an anime convention? She wants it, or whatever the fuck.
Yep. Anyone else have anything they want to bring up here? I think we ran through most of it.
I'm ran through. This game's ran through.
Read Durandal's piece. I'll link that.
Oh yeah, someone should link that. Whoever makes this video. Durandal, friend of the channel, they wrote a good thing about kind of hit scan shooters as sort of Pac-Man evolutions, where it's like, you versus other enemies kind of running through a maze and trying to get the jump on each other and stuff like that, and how F.E.A.R was kind of one of the only hit scan shooters that did that archetype, and how most of the ones after that kind of went for the shooting gallery style.
I need to read that. I haven't read that one.
It's really an older one. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I guess I'll say Halo was pretty cool. I like Halo. It's got a very similar blend of that melee grenade shooting with very reactive AI. But it's an interesting compare and contrast between those two games, because I think they have a similar base premise, but Halo being a console game where they don't really want you doing these 180-degree instant reflex shots sort of drastically changes how you approach that game.
Yeah, Halo has more, I think, the arcade sensibility than F.E.A.R does.
Right.
Even though it's obviously not an arcade game, and it's not made by Japanese developers, and Bungie made like RTSs, I think, and Marathon before that.
You know,
Right.
Oh no, Oni's an arcade game. Fuck that.
Oni-
no.
oh,
They,
no,
no,
that's
they
true.
understood.
No,
They saw the vision.
No, that's true. That game you can clearly tell it's thinking about those games. So no, that's fair.
Yeah.
You can tell they're weebs. But
Yeah, you can tell they're
yeah.
weebs. That's true.
I mean, you could tell that with Monolith as well.
Shogo Armored Division.
Yeah, Shogo. Well, in this game, the whole, I mean, I think I haven't seen any of those stuff, like the movies, like the Japanese horror films that this is supposedly inspired by, but it's sort of,
I mean, even
it's
the box art is kind of evoking the Ring, and
yeah, just not integrated very
Yeah.
much at all. But they tried, at least.
Raph wrote Last of Us Part 2.
Oh.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's another game of just very highly dynamic enemies that are constantly trying to get the jump on you.
Yeah.
That game was all about like the best parts of Fear, where it's just these just intersecting lanes, enemies coming at you from different angles, and that's just all Last of Us is. But it's also more explicitly a stealth game, which doesn't really function the same way.
Well, and it's something I think that is weird about this game is that it has a lot of the hallmarks AI wise of like stealth games, which are like known for having good AI, and then there's just like zero stealth. Like there's a little bit of line of sight, but there's not even, considering how crazy the lighting system is, they didn't even like just steal the Splinter Cell one or anything. As far as I can tell.
I mean, I think I did think of Thief a lot when playing this game. There's definitely, I mean, it doesn't play like Thief, but like, it kind of has a little bit of that in it, and like,
definitely, yeah.
There was a moment that I remember was very cool where there's kind of a scripted conversation or whatever, in Extraction Point of like, it's just these two soldiers like talking, and they're kind of on a ledge above me, and I was kind of skulking around, and I hear them above me. And I just kind of peek my head over and throw the grenade. So they're just talking, and they hear the ding, 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 grenade, and then you can hear them like the death cries. It's like that's cool.
Yeah.
What I think the closest thing the game gets to stealth is that you can actually enemies can actually lose track of you. It is very hard to do. It is very specific. It's not always that useful, but it's something that can happen. I think if there ever was a Fear sequel, right, it would take advantage of that.
It needs to happen way earlier, because like it's part of the issue I mentioned, where it's like if they sort of know where you are, they like won't advance because they're scared of you, and it really makes it it drags out some of those fights where it's like if they lost sight of you and then did like the let's all get in a line kind of thing, like that would, I think, be a big improvement. But alas, they remember where you are like a hawk.
Oh, I should shout out.
That was a mixed metaphor. But...
I should shout out. This is one of the games on the tail end of like audio in game stuff. It has an optional implementation of a proprietary audio technology called EAX by a company called Creative. There's a way to get it to work now with something called OpenAL Soft. Somebody can link the mod that I posted somewhere in here. I do think, in terms of that immersive quality, I think that stuff is worth it to try to get to work. It's finicky because some of Monolith are hack developers or something. I don't know why it's so finicky.
Yeah.
But that's it's like that was kind of when, this is coming again, tail end of audio in games, where like they set different flags of like how much reverb there should be per room, and kind of like some filters for the noise, as I understand, and stuff like that. And like that combined with some positional audio stuff is, I think, really enhances that element of the game, even when if, like Raph was saying earlier, if some of the encounters are kind of getting a little monotonous in terms of the, you're shooting in hallways sometimes or whatever, you can kind of latch onto that element more, and just that carries it.
I agree.
Yep.
Nice.
It's experiential.
We're dragging.
Yeah, I think
Let's
I think
cut it
it's.
off.
Yeah, I think it's. I just wanted to shout that out.
I just
No,
want to
yeah,
mention
that was good.
that
That was good.
they killed the black guy first in
They did.
Extraction Point. I was really excited to have an ally because I forgot how Extraction Point plays out, but he died in front of me, and I don't know. I think the game is a little too callous with
Yeah.
killing off your allies.
But at least Norton Mapes lives in like the best cameo appearance ever. Like that shit when he comes back in Extraction Point and he ducks up and he's like, "Oh, can you give me one of your Gatling guns, a rocket launcher?" And he just runs away. I think it's like, and then you will go into the environmental storytelling room where it's just him, like it's like an empty room full of like fucking empty Cheetos bags.
Yeah. From Software, eat your heart out.